recording now. Okay. So first things first, I need to fork this def grandma from Lima Platoon to my GitHub. So I'm up here in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to click fork. I guess I already did it. So I'm going to click it again, but I've already done it, so that's okay. So right here it is. And now I need to clone it down by going to the green clone or download, copy it. Now I'm coming up here into VS Code. I'm going to open up the terminal. Can everyone see the terminal okay? Yep. All right, cool. Clear it. I'm going to git clone, print it, or copy it, and then click enter, and here it comes. Def grandma right here. So I'm going to cd into def grandma just because I only want that in my VS Code. I could just leave it like this, so it's totally fine, but I just want def grandma. So I do code -r space period. It's going to reload VS Code, and it's just going to have the def grandma directory here. I'm going to open it up. There we go. And this upper left-hand corner, the Explorer, if you click it, it closes so you have a little more room. So I'm going to go back to the README, just kind of see what did everyone think of def grandma? How many people got to it? No. Anybody? I saw a bunch of Slack in the Lima Platoon Slack channel, a bunch of people talking about it. Yeah. Yep. Great.
I thought it was interesting that we kind of ended up using different modules.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think this is the first cohort I've seen that used multiple different modules. It's great.
Again, I did have one question, I guess, sort of is regarding modules. I think it's something set up with the environment. Basically, each time, because I noticed I actually used the prompt in 99 bottles, so I can get user input to get how many bottles there were. Most people didn't use that until def grandma when we're trying to get the input. The question I had was, even though I downloaded the prompt via npm install, I had to do it twice, basically once for each project.
Yep.
I was trying to find out if there's a way to do that just in like an environment so that I'm not constantly always download. I mean, I know I'll have to download it per workspace.
I think you can install it globally and it should work, but yeah, I think if you install things globally, it's like throughout the entire environment. But I rarely ever install things globally unless the program explicitly tells me to or I need to.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
I just wanted to say it's a lot easier handling that on Visual Studio. Just the user interface and everything, and being able to access your modules and all that, including your project. It's a lot easier, but I don't know. VS Code's still good.
All right. Yep. So this one is a lot more difficult because you have to install modules, and most of you have not experienced using npm yet, but this is the first challenge. We're going to be using it. So it's okay if you don't 100% know what npm is specifically right now. We're going to get to that a lot later. I'll cover it a little bit, but let's continue. So def grandma, write a program which can imitate a grandma who's hard of hearing that must meet these specific requirements. And down here, considerations, extraordinary difficult. If your code, you'll definitely need to use if and likely an else if and else statements. So I think I remember saying click all the links. So I'm going to click all these links and see. Yeah, what? That's weird. Anyway. So looks like this prompt. So again, JavaScript is the language of the web. So it's not inherent. Natively, it doesn't have built-in methods to accept users' input on your local machine. It only has methods to accept user input from a browser. So like if I'm in this browser, if I type in prompt, and execute, I can accept a user variable. So if I type in like let user input, I think this is going to work. A prompt, and I click enter, and I say like something I'm inputting, click enter. Then if I type in user input, it assigns that value to this user input, but this is only in the browser. It doesn't work. So if I type in like prompt in here and execute it and run this code, let's see if this works. If I do node def grandma JS, see, like nothing shows up. It throws an error. Prompt is not defined. It doesn't know what this is, as it does in the browser. So that's interesting. But we have these links, this prompt, and looks like this a beautiful command line prompt for Node.js. This prompt library. So it's a little. So I'm just reading it. Using prompt is relatively straightforward. There are two core methods you should be aware of: prompt.get and prompt add properties. All right. Their methods take strings, representation properties, and okay, whatever. To get started with prompt is easy. Let's take a look at this example. So if I literally I'm just going to copy this. I don't know what this is doing, but it just says this is like an easy way to get it started. So I'm just going to comment this out and put this down here. So it looks like I've got this var prompt equals require prompt. This first time I'm seeing, I don't know what this means. I've got this prompt.start, which I guess looks like it says start the prompt. Get two properties from the user, username and email. So it looks like prompt.get takes in two parameters. One is an array that looks like username and email. So this is what I want to take in from the user. And then it also takes in a function as a parameter, which, okay, let's run this and see if this works. All right. No def grandma. Oh, shoot. So I got a bunch of errors. I don't know what this means. So it says internal module. I don't know what this means. It says error. Here's an error thing. It says error cannot find module prompt. So as developers, 80% of the time, we're going to be reading or Googling or reading documentation. And the other 20%, we're actually going to be writing code. So get used to writing and reading and searching for solutions, how things work. Because I don't know how this thing works right now. I'm just read it, I copied and pasted it and ran it, and I got an error. So, but it says it should work. Like, this is an easy way it should work. This result will the following command line input. Looks like it should output something like that, but it's not. So there's an error occurring. So here's the error. So I'm going to Google this because I don't know how to solve it. Because I'm a new developer, I don't know what's going on. So how do I resolve cannot find module error using Node.js? This isn't my specific error. I've got GitHub. I'm trying to pull npm install. I don't know what that means. Cannot find module. Fey. This is kind of looks like what I'm looking at. Cannot find module. It's similar, but I don't know what this Fey is. So I'm just looking. I'm reading. So here are the answers. So there's 509 people upvoted as this is the best answer. Using npm install installs the module in the current directory. Okay, I had never used npm install before in a subdirectory called node modules. Okay, I don't necessarily know what that means. I'm just gonna continue looking. Come down here. Cannot find module prompt. What the hell is all this crap? Don't you love these ads? Jesus. Looks like I already looked at this for a while. Check the. Where is that at? All right, that's a little bit better. So this is another place I'm looking. I just Google searched it. Don't necessarily know what I'm looking for. It says, cannot find module prompt Node.js. That's prompt is what I'm looking for. So on the running file name error, cannot find module prompt. That's exactly the error I'm getting. So it says, so I performed npm install prompt. Okay, I don't know necessarily what that does, but let's Google that. So I get this prompt npm package. So npm is Node Package Manager. It essentially is a Node modules or packages are essentially just code that other people have written that makes your life easier. So someone ran into this problem that needed to take in a user input from the terminal, and there wasn't a that wasn't already built. So someone built this prompt package that enables us to do it instead of us having to write this thing ourselves. So it's literally just a collection of code that we use, that we can install in our projects and use. So here's the prompt. So this is exactly what I downloaded or copied over to my right here. That's this. So this is the actual npm website or npm, page for the prompt package. It looks like there's over 725,000 downloads. Great. So that's with the npm install prompt. So I'm going to type that npm install prompt because it looks like that might be an issue or the thing. Npm install prompt. Did I spell it wrong? Yes, I meant install. So it's going to be installing, it's doing a bunch of stuff. Cool. Like, I don't know what happened. It just installed a bunch of stuff. So it added 33 packages. Cool. One package is looking for funding. So it looks like, and then found 0 vulnerabilities. And let's look. So once I installed it, I've got this package.json lock file. Interesting. We'll get to that in the future. You don't need to know about that now. And we get this node modules folder that has like a bunch of stuff in it. Don't need to know about that right now. And now I'm going to run node def grandma again and see if that error still occurs. Okay, it did not. So it looks like I get this prompt username. I'm going to say Tom Preet, and email tom@email.com. Command line input received, username Tom Preet, email. So I'm not quite sure how this works. I'm starting to kind of understand it. So it looks like prompt.start starts the prompt. And then this get takes in anything like a username and email, which is right here, this prompt username and prompt email. And then it looks like it calls this function. So console logs this command line input received, which is down here. And this username, Tom Preet, looks like it's console log result.username and result.email. So it looks like this function takes in a result. It looks like it's probably an object. Interesting. So I just want to mess around with this because I don't 100% know how it's working. Does anybody have any questions?
And so the fact that that function is there and you haven't defined it in your code, that implies that it's somewhere else in the package, presumably?
Well, yes. Yeah. So this prompt.get runs this. So after it takes in whatever this get method does, so I didn't write this get method. So in the prompt package, this get method, when it executes, it takes this in and then it executes this function after it takes in all this stuff.
Okay, I didn't realize the console logs is actually the function. Okay. Okay.
Cool. All right. see. And so I'm going to change some stuff. Instead of email, I want to change this to password because I just want to mess around with this. And wherever email comes, password. So I'm going to clear this and run this again. So I got a username, Tom Preet. Oh, okay. I got a password, 123, 123, whatever. Cool. So, okay. So we kind of understand how this is going to work. So how do we use this for def gramma? This is the package I'm going to use. I know other people have used other packages. So what I'm going to do is within def gramma, I'm going to move this to the top. So this prompt part, this means that within this file, I want to use this prompt package. So I set it to a variable named prompt, and then I can use all the built-in methods or all the functions that this prompt package has by just doing prompt dot whatever the built-in methods are. So I'm going to move this start to the top because that starts it. And I want to move this up there too. I want to move this up into def gramma. So in here, I write a function def gramma. I'm literally just copying this in here and then executing def gramma. And I want to see if this still kind of works. And instead of taking in a username, I want to take in user input, and user input. So I only want to take in one user input. User input. I just want to run this again just to make sure everything's still working. So I got the user input down here. This is a user input. Cool. All right. Now we can do stuff with this result.user input. So this is where all these if-else statements come from. So let's get a load of that. Delete these. Def gramma. So let's work this first case. If you don't put anything and just hit enter, she responds with what? Okay. So if result.user input equals empty string, I just want to console log what? Is that right? So let's see if this works. So what I did, I'm using this prompt.get, takes in a single user input, and then it checks, comes into here, runs this function. If result.userInput equals an empty string, console log what? All right, see if this works. So I don't want to type in anything. I just want to print enter. Okay, cool, it works. But my thing ended. My program ended. I don't want it to end. I want it to keep going. How do I execute this again? What can I do to execute this prompt.get again?
After line 10, you can call def gramma again.
So after here?
Yep.
Okay, so I can call this def gramma again. So when I run the file, it reads the file, executes this def gramma, comes up here, comes in here, runs this prompt.get, which takes in a user input. So when I run it, it takes in a user input down here. And then once I get that user input, it runs this function and it runs through this if statement. If user input equals an empty string, console log what, and then rerun this def gramma again, which then gets another user input. Let's see if this works.
I'm sorry, actually I would move it outside 2 levels just for the other if options or else options.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's keep it here for now, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to press enter. So it works. Now I want to grab another user input. So that works right now. Let's try to make it work first and then optimize later.
A quick organization question there. So you have the function kind of in the middle of the code. I remember from the pre-work that kind of popped all the functions up to the top. Is there a conscious reason why you did it this way?
Like this part? Or
Well, you had the var prompt and then the prompt.start, and then you start defining the function.
so the prompt.start is the first thing that needs to actually, that's just the way the package works. So I need to have this before this prompt.get. So are you asking
Okay.
like,
So it's defined for the whole thing, right? So you have it for your whole program that you're writing for, as opposed to putting it somewhere else and not having it available for something later on, right?
It's like we're creating a global variable at the top, so something that like.
oh, right here?
Mhm.
Oh, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I think that's what he was asking. More like a global, something that's outside the function is going to be applied to the whole program.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So this is built for, we want this variable to be accessible throughout this entire application.
Okay.
So that's why it's outside of the function.
Okay. All right, so, and then that green and blue there, is that signify anything on the left-hand side? The like 1 through 4 is green, and 6 through, is that just the brackets?
1 through 4 is green.
Line 1 through 4, you see the green vertical bar?
Oh, yeah. I don't know actually what that is. Signifies
I think the blue is the body of the function and the green is like,
stuff that's outside.
yeah, stuff that's outside or maybe variable.
Not necessarily, because line now 16
Oh,
is not highlighted, and it's technically outside of the function. I think the first section is just kind of stuff that's predefined, that's like either global variables. And then again, the blue portion would be the body function, and then not anything else. One other question, I guess, kind of, I think it was, I didn't catch the name. Was it Steve or no? Well, somebody had asked about the prompt.start. And because it's outside of a function, if we had any other functions, they would technically have access to the prompt.start. But if we move the prompt.start inside, then if we had another function, it wouldn't automatically have access, correct? Like scope of the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Correct.
And then one other thing, and again, this is me just kind of maybe getting a few steps ahead. It looks like we're writing def grandma, the function that we're supposed to be doing it inside of the prompt function instead of its own def grandma, if that makes sense. Yeah, because we're putting all the logic and the conditions inside of the function prompt.get. So I wasn't sure how prompt.get fully works. You know, I didn't use this particular prompt version. So would we be able to possibly set this function to like return the user input? Now we could use that user input inside of def grandma.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple ways how to do it. I'm not quite sure the way you're thinking of, like moving prompt.get outside of it and then calling it, or.
No, it'd be like, so if we do the pseudocode for def grandma, it'd be the first thing I'd say is get user input.
Mm-hmm.
Then the second thing would be evaluate and test which condition it matches.
Right.
So for me, I would use the prompt.get and try to set it up to return a variable or return a value to assign it to the user input inside of the scope of def grandma.
Yeah.
And then use it from there. Because the way we're editing this, as far as like line 8 through 10 so far, that's within the scope of the function that's defined in prompt.get. So we're doing the def grandma logic inside of another package. It still works, but to me, just wrapping my head around it, I'm more used to use the prompt.get as a helper function, pull in the data, and then go from there.
Yep. You're 100% right. You can definitely do that. And that's a good way to separation of code and separation of responsibilities with regard to your code. But for sake of time, I'm just going to keep moving forward. If we've got one thing working, let's just keep moving. So the next portion is if you ask a question. So else if, let's see what this one. If you ask a question with any lowercase letters, she responds with "Speak up, kid." Okay, so we can do if. Well, let's actually just do else right now. We'll get to that one later. Because that one seems kind of easy. Because some of these, if it doesn't meet some of these, like the very last one could be with any lowercase. It could possibly be this one. So if you talk to her in all uppercase letters, she responds with "not since 1946." So bring that in here. Oh, come on. Just bring them all in here, actually. All right, second time you say goodbye. So the first time, so if you talk to her, if you ask a question with any lowercase, she says, "Speak up, kid." If you talk to her in all uppercase, she responds with "not since 1946." Okay, so I'm gonna do else if result dot user input equals result dot user input dot. How do I make everything uppercase?
2 dot uppercase.
2 uppercase. So this 2 uppercase is a built-in method within JavaScript. 2 upper. So it converts. Why is it doing that? That's weird. Anyway, so yeah, it's essentially a built-in JavaScript method that converts whatever string to all uppercase. So she responds with "not since 1946." Console log. Not since 1946. And then I want to call def grandma again. So let's exit out of here, clear, run this again. User input, if all capital letters, says "not since 1946, and it prompts me to do another def grandma, or runs the def grandma again. So we got this one down, got this one down. And now for the first time you say goodbye, it says "leaving so soon." So else if user input, result dot user input equals goodbye. She says "leaving so soon." So I'm going to do. Oh, what's going on? Leaving so soon. So if she says it once, or if I say it once, def grandma. I need to keep track of the goodbyes, don't I? So, but if I'm executing this def grandma over and over again, I need to keep track of a variable of how many goodbyes. So if I'm executing this over and over again, I don't want the variable to be within the scope of def gramma because I'm executing it over and over again. I'm going to do it in a global scope. So I'm going to keep track of number of goodbyes, number of goodbyes. Initially it's 0. And then I'm going to do number of goodbyes plus plus. So else, if you say goodbyes a second time, so if result dot input goes by, and how do I do an and statement? And number of goodbyes equals 1. That means I've already said goodbye once, so the number of goodbyes will equal 1. And then the next time I say it is this time. So I say it twice. Then I can do plus plus. And then I can say console log. Oh, come on. Later skater. Now I'm going to have to move the logic of this around. Else, since not else, I can just do console log, speak up kid. And then call this again, def gramma. Plus plus. Later scare, and then after I say goodbye twice, the program should return.
I think you need a number of goodbyes in that first goodbye clause.
Number of goodbyes.
The if part. Because right now, you need to have number of goodbyes equals 0.
So what line?
Line 16.
16.
Don't you need a second and number of goodbyes equals 0?
Oh, I can actually just I can move this code.
Yeah, you could do it.
Above that, and it should return the same thing, right? So if number of goodbyes,
okay.
So if the user input equals goodbye and number of input equals 1, then I can return later skater. Else, then it comes down here. But so right here also there's going to be an issue. So what if I do goodbye, all capital letters? It's going to come down here, the control flow or the logic. Coming here, that means it's uppercase. So I might have to move that around as well. Let's test it. So if I type in goodbye, actually it says not since 1946. So I'm going to move this down to here. Let's see if it meets the minimum requirements. So I don't press anything. What? I type in goodbye. Speak up, kid, because came in here. User input does not equal all capital letters goodbye. Doesn't meet this. So it says, comes down here, speak up, kid. But if I do like that, all capital letters, not since 1946. If I do goodbye once, leaving so soon. If I do anything else, speak up, kid. If I do goodbye again, later skater. So that's def gramma. There's other ways to do it. I got it working.
You're missing the intro. I think it's like hello kid or something like that.
Hey kid. Oh yeah, we could do.
But you want it outside the function, right?
Yep. So I can just do like, hey kid. Probably put it right there. Oh. So, hey kid, thank you. Nothing. Goodbye. Goodbye. There we go. So that's def grandma.
So how do you get rid of the word prompt and all that stuff?
Oh, I don't think you can. I think that's part of the package.
Well, I wanted to make it look like the example, and you couldn't have that because the example has a little arrow. Like,
oh, this is probably Python or something. This is just like an example of what the output should be, not necessarily specifically what it needs to look like.
Hey, Tom, you can set the properties of the prompt.
Can you? So in the package, is there a settings down here?
Yeah, they go into it somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's just like the indicator for what input looks like. The little chevron or the arrow is what you're inputting, and when the chevron little thing isn't there, it's what the output is.
Right. Yeah. So this part is like specifically what the computer's putting, or what the function is outputting, and this is like what your input is.
It's like a pseudocode example of what input output looks like in the console.
that's what I was stuck on, using that initial package. So I stumbled upon prompt-sync, and I was able to change it to actually have that little chevron.
Oh, nice. Hey, if you got it to work, that's awesome. To look identical, that's great.
This might be a dumb question, but since the function is calling itself, does that mean it's a recursion?
Yeah. Recursive function is a function that calls itself until a base case is met. So I think technically, yeah, I guess it is kind of like recursively.
Okay.
I have a side note to that. I didn't actually test it, but I'm pretty sure if we were to run this program and never call goodbye and can just keep running all of the other inputs, we would hit a maximum recursion depth and it would crash.
Oh, so if we like called it like 1,000 times or something?
I think it's like 10,000 for JavaScript and it's like 1,001 for Python. If you were to write it this way. So in this scenario, it would, because there's not like a thing that ends it, because you could go forever,
right?
As long as you're the one controlling the input, because you could go for so long if you wanted to and never say goodbye, it would crash. And this, I think probably a loop, like a while loop or something, would probably be because it would crash the program. A while loop would be a better scenario to go with.
Right.
And you didn't test that? Come on, you got to test that. Type it 1,000 times.
I didn't want to write any test code for JavaScript.
All right, I'm going to end the recording right there.